All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's tournament strategy show where we look back at last night, then we'll look at today's slate, game plan this one. A little bit of deja vu here. A lot of teams playing each other again. But anyway, interesting slate. And then, of course, happy to have conversations along the way. Always love knowing what you guys are thinking for the slate. And then, of course, later today on the pre-lock show, B-Dubs and I will show our leverage plays, our core plays, what I'm doing in the domination station today for the pre-lock show, which is at 5:30 p.m. Eastern for VIP members only. Link in the description for that. Feel free to use promo code Bob if you want a 10% discount. Anyway, y'all, let's look at last night. Dave, good to see you, man. Appreciate you. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button. It really does help us all out a lot. What's up, Samuel? Hope you're doing well, man. Let's see. Let's look at last night's slate. Was a pretty good one for me. I didn't take down anything, and that's mostly because I didn't listen to a lot of your advice. But a lot went well for us. We had some really awesome fades that came through, so glad to celebrate that. But a lot of you in the chat yesterday, and a lot of Army members were on Kobe White. Personally, I was not. It happens. It's okay. You don't have to get everything right. He was relatively low owned too. This isn't the 100K winning lineup. This is the $50,000 winning lineup. They didn't have the 100K tournament yesterday, I don't believe. So Kobe White was in there. Wish I had more of him. Colin Sexton was a core play. Like I said, it was a really clear, obvious play that made sense. THT, I was not a fan of. On the pre-lock show, I was pretty nervous about him. I did cap my exposure. In my tournament, he wasn't this popular, so I still had some leverage on him. He was a core play, or Brandon was also over the field on him as well. THT made plenty of sense. So one of those plays was closer to round field weight than a lot of leverage, but at least we still had him, so that was good. Watford, my guy Zolo mentioned on this show, or maybe it was in the Discord, but he came through. The domination station liked, which is our optimizer here at DFS Army, liked Trendon Watford last night. I unchecked him, clearly a mistake, but he crushed last night. I don't really love playing for blowouts. Watford saw more run because of the blowout, but it worked clearly. Vucevic was a leverage play, a pre-lock show leverage play. I think Brandon got us onto this play, B-Dubs. I'm not 100% certain, but I'll give him credit for it. It was a really sharp call he made on the pre-lock show. Bam Adebayo was out for the Heat, and once he reminded me of that, I was like, yeah, Vucevic makes a ton of sense here. Once again, I believe we had a 20% min on him, maybe a 10% min, I don't remember, but we had leverage here. That play worked out. This is where it gets really interesting. Everyone and their mom was acting like I was an idiot, was stupid for fading Doncic last night. And of course, Doncic had a good game, but it was really SGA that you needed. And I had a 30% min on him. SGA was a leverage play last night. This is what really saved me. Not going to lie, I was tilting a good bit. I was not happy. I was a little upset until SGA came through for us and everything was okay. Lou Dort, we had plenty of exposure to. Kelly O, we had plenty of exposure to. I don't believe this is the best lineup possible. The 50K winning lineup, the contest was relatively small. I feel like there's a world where you could play SGA, Harden, who we had a 30% min on, or 20% min on. I think a combination of between those two probably could beat this. But anyway, really good slate there. This is my guy, E-Money. We talk about him a lot. He did very well on the night slate. He had a really good ROI here. And then Josh in 24 also had a solid, really good screenshot here too. Sometimes I forget to post screenshots. Sometimes I don't have the time, but congrats to you guys for crushing it. Love to see it. Dixon, what's up, man? Hope you're doing well. Rodney. Dixon said, Josiah, is Curry done? His old ceiling gone? Yeah, it feels like it. I'm kind of tired of putting my 5% min on him at this point. Nice, Jimmy. That's how you do it. You had Harden and SGA. You did well yesterday, I would assume. You have to get some of the cheaper pieces right. I think you probably would do fine even if you had Dunn in there, who I had a lot of. Dunn sucked for me a good bit last night, but because everyone else went off, it worked out. Yeah, Josh, congrats, man. That was awesome. Upper time to go. Hornets at the Wizards, Yeah, we always do. Let's jump into it. Let's look at this slate. Yesterday's in the past. Let's try to make it happen again. We have the Pelicans going up against the Hornets. So I feel like I talk about this every single show, but there's a lot of questionable tags that we'll have to pay attention to. Look at the Discord, look at Upper's notes. We'll talk about it on the pre-lock show. Thankfully, a lot of these games are pretty early, so ideally we'll get this news in time. But Zion Williamson is listed as questionable. Obviously, that matters a lot for this team. We saw Ingram go off in the same exact spot on Wednesday. He's not that expensive, so if Zion's out, more than happy to go back there. CJ disappointed us with Zion out. I would be more than willing to go back to CJ here. I wouldn't have any reservations there. The Hornets are bad everywhere defensively. And then I have a like on Zion because if he plays, he will be a focal point for me as well. So my thought process now is if Zion sits, Ingram and CJ are guys I want to force exposure to. If Zion plays, I want exposure to Zion. I'm a little nervous about Joval here, guys. He's a little priced up now. 7,100 is pretty much the right price tag for him in this spot. So he doesn't have a ton of upside left at this price tag, but I play bigs against the Hornets. So Joval it is. I'll have exposure to him. I can pretty much guarantee that. And then, of course, if Zion is out, we got it right last time. Trey Murphy is the pivot that you hit with here. Hawkins is really out of the lineup these days. Dyson sees a nice boost as well. Of course, wouldn't be excited about going back to Herb, but if Zion's out, I would be okay with it. Just because you hurt me once, all you can do is hurt me again. E-Money, what's up, man? Hopefully Zion is still at the buffet from Wednesday. I hope so. The crazy thing is I saw on Underdog that apparently their coach said his ankle was fine. So they felt like he would come back relatively soon. So I feel like it's a relatively decent chance he plays today, but it would be awesome if he didn't. Josh said they are taking the meat off the bone with pricing him up. Yeah, exactly. He's much less. He won't be a core play. I can guarantee that. If Zion's out, I'll try to get leverage on him, but I would consider him being a core play if Zion's out, but if Zion plays, he's definitely not going to be a core play at that price tag. And I just think there's better spots. So even if Zion's out, I don't think he'll be a core play for me. You had 4 Jazz players also. Nice, Jimmy. Yeah, most of the Jazz guys worked out besides Dunn, and I might be missing someone else. They weren't fantastic, though, by any means. They weren't slate breakers. Next up, we have the Hornets against the Pelicans. This team is a hot mess, but right now, Mark Williams is doubtful. PJ Washington is questionable. That does matter a good bit. Then LaMelo's been out for a while. I'm getting some exposure in my own early runs to guys like Nick Richards and Brandon Miller. They're just mid-range values that are making a good bit work on this slate. I don't feel overly passionate about them. Ideally, we get more news and if they lower in exposure, I'll be totally fine with that. I'm not overly excited about them. Now, Terry Rozier, on the other hand, my guy B-Dubs has been on him all week, and it's been working out all week. And here against the Pelicans, I'm not overly concerned about their defense. I am more than willing to play Terry here. He's just been way too good. Let's see. Last game against Miami, he had 54. Game before that, he had 60. Really, he's been average. Like against Toronto before that, he had 44, 47 before that, 46. Still decent performances for his price range. And if you go back to that Nets game on the 30th of November, he had a 69-point DK fantasy point game. Love his upside. Like having exposure to him. He's not very chalky. He is relatively expensive at 8,700, but it makes sense for what he's doing right now. So I like having exposure to Terry. Outside of that, no one's really standing out for me too much. Nick Richards is, of course, more viable if Mark Williams doesn't play, he's a much better play too if PJ Washington misses this game as well. But again, not overly excited about that. All right, game of the slate with a total of 260. No offense, whenever the Wizards are a part of a really high game total, I'm just like, what? I feel like something's gonna go wrong here. The games just get so ugly usually. But I always say it. High game totals, just like last night with SGA, I'm going to have leverage here. Tyrese Halliburton, I'm going to force exposure to tonight, especially if he's really just this low owned. I feel like that's probably going to change, especially if we get some injury news. I'll have exposure to Halliburton tonight. He'll be a priority for me. Miles Turner, 20% from a popularity standpoint, but we like playing bigs against the Wizards in general. I like this price tag. Again, I like the game total. My focal points here, the guys I want to prioritize and make sure they're showing up in lineups are Halliburton and Turner. Because Turner's so chalky, I don't know if I'll be able to get a ton of leverage, but I'll be at least at field weight. And if the domination station allows it to happen for me, I don't want to force the issue here too much. I will be okay with him being a core play. Of course, the risk with Turner is he can get into foul trouble. And so that can be a little scary, but you got to be okay with that. Nice, Josh. Good that you had Terry. Thomas Dye, hope you're doing well, man. Yeah, Josh, just trusting the tools works out. I mean, for me personally, I like to force what I want to have happen into it. But as long as you are able to find a happy middle ground, you can do you. Let's see. Doogie said, "What's up? Good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well." Let's see here. And then outside of Halliburton and Turner, I'm okay with the other pieces here too. I'm not getting too much exposure to Hill, Brown, Mathurin, Nesmith currently, but ideally they'll start to show up a little bit more in my lines as we get closer to lock. Again, super high total. I want exposure to these guys. For the Wizards, it's weird because they're not really showing, they're not really projecting that great. I put a like on all of them. Currently, Jordan Poole is listed as questionable. So if he's out, that's a really big deal. He plays a lot of minutes, really good usage rate for this team. So if he's not playing, the guy who sees the highest increase in usage here is Deni Avdija. And so, long story short, Kyle Kuzma looking super low owned today in a really good matchup. He's feasted in spots like this, even at an $8,400 price tag. I'm always comfortable getting leverage on Kuzma in good game environments. And this is one of those. So probably not a shock to a lot of you, but Kuzma's looking like a leverage play for me. If Jordan Poole plays, I'm totally fine having exposure to him at 6,400. So glad he's nowhere close to 7K anymore. Makes him way more viable. But again, he is questionable with that ankle injury, so I have to keep a close eye out for that. And then, like I mentioned, Deni Avdija sees the highest increasing usage if Poole is out. So if Poole's out, he'll arguably be a core play depending on how the rest of the slate breaks out with news. But I'll at least make sure I'm over the field on him depending on where ownership falls. But that's where I want to be, is over the field. Let's see here. Daniel Gafford, again, really good spot for him. Want him to show up in my lines. And then Tyus Jones is someone that I don't usually love playing, but the sim model usually has a bit of a thing for him 9 times out of 10. And so that's usually why I usually give him at least some sort of thought. Brandon also usually likes him, so we usually talk about him a little bit on the pre-lock show. Today, I am on board with playing Tyus Jones. He's 5,600. He makes a lot work. There's obviously risk involved there, but he's a much better play if Jordan Poole gets ruled out. So hopefully this doesn't come as a shock, but playing a lot of guys from the highest game total in the slate in this Pacers and Washington game. Yeah, I can start over, man. No worries. I'm kidding. Can't do it. Can't do that today. Josh said Jackson going to pop in the DS, I'm assuming. So not for me currently. He's not showing up that much, Isaiah Jackson. And a lot of the reason for that is just the price increase. At 4,400, he is still a decent price tag, but is no longer okay, we have to play Isaiah Jackson now, just because he is a really good points per minute player, but he doesn't see a lot of minutes. So again, I'm fine getting exposure to Jackson, Nesmith, Mathurin, Brown, Heald. I actually want some exposure, but the only guys I'm prioritizing are Halliburton and Turner, and the only guys showing up in my lines right now are Turner. So we'll see what happens on the pre-lock show. Projections change, a lot changes as we get closer to lock, but for now, that's the way it's looking. I really rarely look at how my lines are looking this early, to be honest, guys. I really just look at the matchups and try to figure out who I'm prioritizing, so I have a good game plan for when I do start making lines, but we'll see. Anyway, next game, we have the Pistons, who are potentially maybe one of the worst teams of all time at this point. They've lost, 21 games in a row at this point. And yes, I have to bring this up because it's the only thing that makes me, as a Panthers and Hornets fan, be able to sleep at night knowing that there's a team out there that's worse than us. So let me have it, okay? Just let me enjoy picking on a team that's worse than my team. Dixon said, do you think Gafford covers his 19.5 points, rebounds, assists tonight? I'm really not a props guy, Dixon. I'm sorry, but I think he will, to be honest. I think so. But not a props guy. Haven't looked into it too much. Next up for the Pistons, you all know I don't love picking on the Sixers, but Cade Cunningham's price is decreasing. He's 8,200. We know he has decent upside. The spread is god awful at 16 points. But at low ownership, Cade Cunningham is on my radar as a potential leverage play. Someone I would be totally fine having 5 to 10% exposure to today. Again, not a good matchup, not a good anything. I just like his price tag and his upside and low ownership. Next up, we have Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. So those are the two guys that I'm targeting from the Sixers tonight. I know a lot of you guys hate Maxey for good reason. The upside has not really been there over the last few games. But again, the sim model, which again is a tool here at DFS Army, has a thing for Maxey. It has for a while. I'm going to keep taking the shot here as long as he's low owned. Joel Embiid, that play is a little bit tougher. He's really expensive, but just like last time he was a leverage play, it's because of the really soft matchup against the Pistons. They're missing a lot of guys here, and it wouldn't shock me if Isaiah Stewart ends up getting kicked out again just because he usually struggles against Embiid and gets frustrated. So Joel Embiid, once again, really good spot, really good matchup for him. So I'll be over the field to him, and I'll be at least around field weight, if not over the field to Maxey. Outside of that, if this game gets ugly, I have no idea who will see a ton of blowout run here. This entire team is relatively old, so there's not really anyone who stands out for me too much. Maybe Kelly O. I don't know. But again, I don't really play the blowout game, so not overly excited about these guys right here. So really prioritizing Maxey and Embiid and moving on from there. Dixon said Maxey banned. I get it. And I think it's a totally fine approach. At this point, I'm just begging for the points. I just like his upside that he used to have. Hopefully he can remember how to do that again. Josh said Pistons, they either keep it close or lose by 40. Yeah, you're not wrong. Joel can get to the nuts, and yeah, exactly. He can get there, and he did. He didn't hit the nuts line, but he was able to exceed value last game, and I think he did that in 3 quarters. So hopefully he can do that again and involve Maxey this time. All right, next up we have a game that I am not excited about at all. We have the Magic against the Celtics. This sounds kind of weird saying still, but 2 pretty decent defenses. Markelle Fultz is listed as questionable. He's been out for a while. So if he returns, that's really just another dagger for the guards on this team. And again, I don't love the matchup for Banchero or Wagner, so I'm not excited about the Magic, long story short, and I don't want any of them to show up in my lines. And if they do show up because the domination station likes them, I don't want them to show up more than 20%. Next up, we have the Celtics against the Magic. Basically, rinse, wash, repeat here. They're looking pretty healthy. for the most part. Well, actually, I take all of that back. I don't know what happened in this last refresh, but everything changed. Al Horford's out. I did know that already. I didn't care about it though. Kristaps Porzingis is doubtful, and then Jaylen Brown is listed as questionable. That's actually a really big deal that will make this game way more viable for the Celtics side of things. We talked about it last time Brown was questionable, but if he sits, Tatum becomes a priority on the slate. It would probably make Halliburton even lower owned, which would be wild. But anyway, Tatum would become a focal point. Derek White sees a nice boost. Jrue Holiday sees a nice boost. Uh, Jrue Holiday in particular wouldn't shock me if he would become a core play in this spot. Outside of that, I need to look a little bit closer to see which of their bench guys would see the highest increase in usage if Brown sat. I just don't know right off the top of my head, so we'll need to look a little bit closer at that. But still, given the matchup, and none of them are super cheap, like Pritchard's 4,600, Hauser's 4,900. With Brown being out, I think they would be okay plays, but I wouldn't prioritize them as much as I would White, Tatum, Holiday. With if Porzingis, Horford, and Cornette are out, Brissett, who would they? Yeah, I think they would start Brissett. And that would make Brissett a core play, and that would give us the value we're looking for on this slate. I wonder, I guess this, I don't know who Quita is, to be honest. I'll ask Brandon if he knows about him on the pre-lock show, and maybe it might be worth taking a shot on him. Oh, man, that changes a lot. This slate would get wild, absolutely wild, if we, it's already pretty weird now with Porzingis doubtful, Horford out. So I can't wait to see how we update these projections and see who starts to pop. So we should get value from the bigs on the Celtics. Again, these guys aren't high usage players. It is a little scary still to play them, but they're only 3K. So I'm willing to take some shots here and have them as core plays and or be significantly over the field on them. So it's probably not going to be a shock. I'm sure everyone else in the industry is excited about it too, but this could be a really good spot. Let's see. I think that's pretty much how I'm treating these guys here. Way more interesting than I thought they were earlier. Would love it if Brown was out, so I could just play a ton of White, Holiday, and Tatum too, along with the value guys. So interesting. Okay. Next up, we have the second highest game total on the slate, and we saw this matchup earlier this week. Here we have Hunter listed as questionable. AJ Griffin is out. The other guys have been out for a while now. For the Hawks, obviously, like Trae Young, Clint Capella, Okongwu, they're all projecting well. The usual guys who show up in your lineups a good bit. I'm not going out of my way to force Trae Young in lineups today, the same way I am Halliburton, Embiid, some of the other pay-up options on this slate. But if Trae Young shows up a little bit naturally, I'm fine with it. Kind of similar to Luka last night, but a very different situation since he's nowhere near as chalky. If Luka showed up in my lines naturally, I was totally fine with it. But I'm not going to go out of my way to force the issue here. So I like Trae, just not going to force him in lines. Murray, Bogdanovich, Capella's fine. Not overly excited about it. Again, I say it all the time. I just don't love this minute split situation. Okongwu, as soon as he gets into the 5K range, he's always a little bit less exciting for me, but he's still projecting well in the domination station, so fine with it. Just never overly excited about these guys personally. Probably a bias of mine somewhere, but at least I'm telling y'all. Let's see. Yeah, that news came super early. Hopefully they are early with the Brown news too. E-Money said Hauser probably. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and Pritchard. And because of their price, I'm just not as excited about them, but they're definitely more viable. What is 4 years ago DFS Brissett on the Pacers were awesome. Yeah, you're not wrong. What was that? The COVID year? I feel like that's when he really went off. It is just like that. Gonna be a great game. Yeah, I'm way more excited about that Celtics game than I was before. This game should be good too. You all know I love Siakam. He did disappoint last time out, I believe. I think Scotty Barnes was the guy who really went off, who we had exposure to. No, Siakam didn't disappoint. He came through. He had a 53-point game performance. Scotty had a 52-point game performance. Those guys were cooking. Was it Schroeder who disappointed? He wasn't awful, but he only scored 35 DK points, which isn't great. Jakob Poeltl did well. Yeah, these guys crushed, and I'm willing to go right back to him here. Jakob Poeltl's in a good spot for me. Totally fine playing Schroeder, Barnes. My biggest thing for the Raptors today, I'm totally fine going right back and playing all of them, even OG. But the deciding factor for me is really going to come down to, do we get more news? So already, I prefer the Celtics value center plays over Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl's ownership is wild. God, I miss the days of Jakob Poeltl being low owned and we were playing him and no one else was. But you can't always have things stay the same. It wouldn't shock me if the ownership falls on these guys a little bit with the Celtics value. And depending on what happens with the Lakers, that could switch things up a little bit too. So for now, I'm fine playing the Raptors. I think it's good to have them in my mix, but it wouldn't shock me if they're not core play worthy where they would be right now if lock was happening in 5 minutes. So we'll see how the slate plays out. We'll talk about it more on the pre-lock show, but good spot for this team. As I was alluding to, another team that did great earlier this week against the Spurs, the Lakers. In that last game, LeBron James was ruled out. Today, LeBron James is questionable. Also, Anthony Davis is questionable. Is this televised? Let's see. Yeah, and I think because of the high ownership, and you all know I just game theory a lot of this kind of stuff. Just because it happened earlier this week doesn't mean it's gonna happen again. So if I can find some spots, and if their ownership stays high, I'm totally fine going in a different direction here. But if they're not super chalky and we don't get more great news that makes other plays more interesting, again, I'm fine playing them. It's just I am looking for ways to get different on this slate, and I'm okay not having them as core plays. Okay, so yeah, this Lakers game is on ESPN tonight, so I would expect they both play here. They're always questionable. Who really knows? But if they both play, AD will be a core play for me. I'll be significantly over the field to him. LeBron, I like having exposure to, especially in nationally televised games, so I'll make sure I'm at least around field weight exposure. Torn Prince is listed as questionable as well. Again, he's been pretty good recently, but he's known for being more so of a cardio guy. He starts for this team, sees anywhere from like 28 to 32 minutes, relatively low usage guy typically. Usually fine getting exposure to him. He's priced up a bit more now than he was earlier this week, but my main point is if he's gone, that's more minutes to guys like Rui, Cam Reddish, Max Christie, just more viable options, even Reeves and Russell. Their minutes just get a little bit more solidified. So if Torn Prince is out, I'm more open to playing the other players from the Lakers not called AD LeBron. If Torn Prince plays, I'm a bit less excited about playing some of these guys. Really, all of them outside of LeBron and AD. So that news does matter more than I think people might expect it to. On the other side of this game, we have the Spurs going up against the Lakers. I like the Spurs here in this spot. Really, I like Victor Wembanyama. He's been so good, and I remember I made a comment about, hey, I think this guy's going to average around 50 points a game earlier this season. And people are like, you're an idiot. You don't know how DFS works. And I was just like, all right, whatever. But this is a really good spot for Victor. Like I said last time, it doesn't matter if AD plays or not. It's still a good spot for him. So I'll be going right back to him here. I don't know if we can get leverage on him like we did on Wednesday or Tuesday or whatever day that was. I'll want to be at least around field weight exposure, though. Other pieces, Vassell is showing up for me just because he's cheap and he sees a lot of minutes. Matchup is decent, so I'm fine going back to or having exposure to him here. Keldon Johnson, if he shows up a bit naturally, I'm fine with it. But per usual, the only guy I'm going to make sure I have exposure to here is Victor. Nice, yeah. Raptors went ham. Yeah, agreed. All right, moving on, guys. Let's see. 2 more games on the slate. The Rockets, I feel like all they do is disappoint me. I keep taking shots on Fred VanVleet, and he's just not that guy anymore. His usage rate is actually surprisingly low for his price tag. Matchup against the Grizzlies isn't one that I'm afraid of. It's just no one here is really standing out for me. I think you can take shots on Fred VanVleet again. The upside should return at some point. And then Şengün, we know the upside's there for him. It's just I'm prioritizing other bigs on this slate. Looks like Jabari Smith is going to be relatively chalky. Let's see. Do I have any notes on Jabari? Yeah. Not overly excited about it. I'll check out the sim. Yeah, he's okay. Has some upside, but doesn't stand out as much as some other guys like at that same price range. So yeah, I don't love the Rockets tonight. Jabari is priced decently just because he plays a crap ton, but not going out of my way to force him in. They'll just have to show up naturally in the DS. Eason has been good. He's streaky though, E-Money. I never go out of my way to play Eason. He just has to show up or someone has to be out. It's hard to trust him for me, but not a crazy play. Yeah, Wemby. Yeah. I just sometimes people just like to hear themselves talk and call other people crazy, but I'm just like, it made total sense that he would get to this point here at some point. The only thing that can set him back at this point is Pop being Pop, getting weird with minutes, or foul trouble. And those are his weaknesses, which is pretty much every player's weakness outside of Pop. Next up, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. The only thing that matters here is Desmond Bane. We saw Jaren Jackson Jr. go off. Again, I said it that game. I was like, if Desmond Bane is out, we play Jaren Jackson Jr., and he went off, but no one played him. So, same situation here again. If Bane is out, Jaren Jackson Jr. becomes the focal point of the offense. He's someone I want exposure to. If Bane is out, fine going back to Rose, Rhodey, Vince. If he starts, he's fine, but he's priced up now, so don't think you really have to go there. Zaire would be okay as well, but really the only guy I try and force exposure to is Jaren Jackson Jr. and Derrick Rose. If everyone's healthy, which they probably will be, not playing these guys. Ooh, I might not have a lot of exposure to the end of the slate. Next up, we have the Knicks against the Suns. Knicks are pretty healthy. Kind of boring, to be honest. Julius Randle, 8,800. Decent spot against the Suns. Game total's not bad. Spread is relatively close. We know Randle has upside. And I talk about this a lot on the pre-log show. For me, if I don't love a guy and he's already getting ownership, he's just typically not a guy I'm going to force exposure to. So again, if he shows up naturally, that's fine, but not someone I'm going to put a min on or put a like on or anything like that, unless someone talks me into it later. But I just really prefer Lakers, Spurs, Pacers, Washington, now the Celtics, and Pelicans, Hornets, and I guess the Raptors. I just prefer all these spots over this game. So don't love Randle, don't love the ownership. If it goes down, if Randle was low owned, and if that changes by the time we get to the pre-lock show, he'll be a bit more interesting. Let's see. Brunson's fine. Don't love it. Barrett, same story. Hartenstein, don't love the price tag. Just none of these guys are standing out for me, especially with the value that we should get from the Celtics. But again, I'm okay getting some exposure to Randle here. The Suns are healthy. Knock on wood that it stays that way. It's interesting seeing how they are playing together. Let's see. How did they... I know I'm not playing Devin Booker at 10,400. That's just not happening for me. Look a little bit closer at KD. I think he's usually the one I'm more open to taking shots on. Okay. Yeah, Booker did see 61 points, though, against Brooklyn, which isn't bad. Booker, Durant. Durant saw 46 points. Again, not awful, but not great. And in the matchup I don't love to exploit or pick on, not going out of my way to play Durant. I'm kind of getting desperate here. I'm just hoping someone stands out. Nurkic did pretty well against Brooklyn last game. But again, I think we're going to have decent big plays today. So I don't think we have to chase that 52-point performance from him. He had 22 rebounds against the Nets. Nurkic. That is wild. It's interesting, and that's one reason why I want to keep a close eye on Nurkic. I think his main role is going to be get every rebound and pass the ball to whoever's open. Yeah, he even was pretty aggressive from a scoring standpoint, too. Interesting. Fun team. But not great for DFS. It wouldn't shock me if we just see random guys getting hot. Bradley Beal did see 33 minutes in that last game against Brooklyn. 6,900. He didn't score great, though. So they're probably just trying to work him into form. He owned it all? No? Yeah. Again, not a great matchup. Bradley Beal has not been good so far. But I'm always fine taking shots on low-owned guys who are too cheap for the production we know they can have. So 5, 10, 15, 20% exposure to Beal tonight. Last game on the slate. Totally fine with that. Totally fine with it. So, yeah, I guess I will have some exposure, at least to Beal. And then maybe a little bit of Randall from the Knicks, but not playing a lot of these guys. All in all, I like this slate. I think there's some spots we can get different in. We do need to see what happens with the Celtics. Obviously, we have to see what happens with injury news with the Lakers and Pelicans and Wizards. But I think by the time we get to the pre-lock show, we'll have some pretty interesting leverage plays. And I can't wait to see what B-Dubs thinks and everyone else thinks about the slate too. So I look forward to seeing you all later today, 5:30 p.m. on the pre-lock show. If not, I'll see you all on Monday. Looking forward to the weekend. It's going to be a good one. So peace out, y'all. Good luck. Crush it out there.